Our topic today is pathogens and human illnesses. So, germs such as bacteria, viruses, and parasites cause many diseases in humans. The germ theory, we should know what a theory is by now, proposed explanation backed by lots and lots and lots of evidence, but it was first proposed by a scientist by the name of Louis Pasteur. It states that microorganisms cause diseases. There are two different classes of disease when we talk about diseases. The first, the ones that we're talking about today, they are called infectious diseases, like the flu or COVID. These can be passed from person to person. The other category is non-infectious diseases. Those are like heart disease and cancer. Those don't get passed on by bacteria and viruses, so we won't be discussing those today. But that's the other category of diseases that scientists study. Pathogens is just an all-encompassing term for disease-causing microorganisms. Not to be confused with antigens, which are proteins on the surface of all pathogens that our body recognizes as foreign. So all of our cells have little ID tags. We talked about this when we talked about cells. Our brain cells, our muscle cells, they have little tags on them to tell our body, hey, this is normal, this is supposed to be here. Well, pathogens, the microorganisms that we don't want, they have their own ID tags. Those are called antigens, and they tell our body, this is a foreign substance, get it out of here. Types of pathogens. One is bacteria. These are single-celled organisms with a cell wall. They cause illness by either releasing chemicals that are toxic to the host or destroying healthy body cells. How do we get rid of a bacterial infection? If you've ever had a bacterial infection, if you have a lot of tonsillitis or strep throat, you have to go to the doctor, you have to get an antibiotic. Antibiotics are specifically to get rid of bacterial infections, nothing else. Number two is viruses. These consist of a DNA or RNA strand covered by a protein coat. They are not considered to be living because they cannot live or reproduce outside of a host because there are no ribosomes. They have to take over our protein-making machinery to make more of them. They cause illness by replicating themselves, which destroys or alters the host cell structure. HIV and COVID are both viruses. Fungi or fungus cause illness by piercing healthy cells and draining the healthy cells of their nutrients. Athlete's foot. If you are an athlete, you've ever had athlete's foot, that is a fungus that grows on your feet when they are too sweaty and you don't clean them well enough. Protozoa. In picture, it looks like a little purple worm. That is called a protozoa. So it's not a bacteria, it's not a virus, it's not a fungus. It's called a protozoa. It's its own class, its own thing. But these suck out the nutrients from a host cell to complete their life cycles. In humans, they most of the time use our red blood cells. An example is malaria. Malaria is the disease. It is caused by that little purple worm, or protozoa. And then parasites grow, feed on, and possibly kill the host. Example in the picture, that little worm is called filaria. And it enters through contaminated food and can grow in your intestines to be a foot long. This is why there is no 5-second rule. These things can get into your food and contaminate it after a half a second on the ground. They don't wait 5 seconds. The 5-second rule is a myth. So how do you catch a pathogen? They can be transferred by direct or indirect contact. And with COVID over the past few years, we should be an expert on how we can possibly catch some kind of pathogen. So indirect contact does not require touching an infected individual. You can touch an infected surface, which is why we've been cleaning and sanitizing desks and everything everywhere for the past few years. You can also breathe infected air, which is the point of the masks. You keep your breath and your germs in and you don't pass it to other people. Or somebody's not wearing a mask and you're wearing one, it's blocking whatever is trying to get in. Vectors are anything that carries pathogens and transmits them into healthy cells. Insects are very common. Ticks carry Lyme disease. Mosquitoes are the vector that carry the little purple worm that causes malaria.